I was sitting in the cab of my heavy-duty work truck, the air conditioning unit struggling and failing to fight off the brutal 90-degree heat of a mid-July afternoon, when my life as I knew it shifted entirely on its axis. My hands were still deeply stained with dark grease, metallic dust, and the kind of industrial grime that takes 3 days of scrubbing to get out of your cuticles. I had just wrapped up a massive 12-hour commercial ventilation repair at a downtown high-rise. My muscles were screaming, my shirt was drenched in sweat, and I was chewing on a dry, day-old turkey sandwich, staring blankly at the dusty dashboard. I was just trying to catch my breath, trying to find the energy to put the truck in drive and head back to the shop to deal with payroll. Then, my phone buzzed loudly in the center console cup holder. It was an automated email notification from my primary business bank. Usually, I ignore these until I am sitting at my desk. It is almost always a routine policy update, a monthly statement reminder, or some generic marketing material about business credit cards. But the bold preview text caught my eye, and my blood ran ice cold in my veins. Action required. New user authorization confirmed. I dropped my sandwich. It tumbled onto the rubber floor mats, but I did not care. I wiped my grimy hands frantically on my heavy denim work pants and snatched up the phone, my thumbs smudging the screen. The email glared back at me, illuminating a message that made my stomach drop so fast I felt physically sick. A new user had been granted full administrative access to my business reserve savings account. This was not my operating account. This was the account that held my emergency net, my equipment replacement fund, my entire financial security blanket. It contained exactly $150,000. And the username that had just been granted full, unrestricted access to withdraw, transfer, and manage those funds was Kalen_Luxlife. My brother. The screen blurred for a second. I blinked hard, shaking my head as if trying to physically dislodge the information from my brain. The words simply did not make sense. How on earth could Kalen, a guy who could not even manage to pay for his own premium cable subscription without begging for a handout, have administrative access to my commercial savings? I had built my heating and cooling company from a single rusted van and a box of hand tools into a massive fleet of trucks through blood, sweat, and endless shifts in sweltering attics and freezing, rat-infested basements. Every single dollar in that account represented a weekend I did not take off, a holiday I worked through, a back muscle I pulled. That money was my life force sitting in one secure place. And now, my parents' precious golden child had the keys to the vault. I immediately dialed the direct branch number, hitting the steering wheel in sheer, unadulterated frustration as the automated voice asked me to please hold for the next available representative. I bypassed the prompts and dialed the direct extension for the branch manager, Odessa. When she finally picked up the line, my voice was shaking with a suppressed, violent rage I had never experienced before. Odessa, this is Declan. I just got an automated notification on my phone that a user was added to my reserve account. I did not authorize this in any way, shape, or form. I need that account frozen right this second. Odessa sounded incredibly confused, the rustling of heavy paper files echoing through the receiver. Declan? Wait, you are awake? You are speaking to me right now. Of course I am awake. I am sitting in my damn truck. Odessa, what the hell is going on over there? I heard her take a deep, shaky breath. The sound of her keyboard clacking furiously filled the brief silence. Declan, your parents, Harrison and Genevieve, came into the branch exactly 2 hours ago. They are listed as your emergency contacts from when you initially opened the account 5 years ago. They had a notarized medical power of attorney document with them. They told us, Declan, they told us you were in a medically induced coma after a severe scaffolding collapse on a downtown job site. The silence in my truck was deafening. The only sound was the rattling of the broken air vent. Coma. They looked a bank manager in the eye and told her I was in a coma. They said your brother Kalen needed immediate, emergency access to handle your escalating medical bills and to ensure your employees got their payroll checks while you were incapacitated in the intensive care unit. Odessa continued, her tone shifting from professional banking courtesy to pure, unadulterated horror as she realized the true extent of the fraud that had just taken place in her lobby. My mother's voice suddenly echoed in my head, a toxic, haunting memory from years ago when she demanded I buy Kalen a car. You are just a contractor, Declan. You do not need that kind of money sitting around while your brother's public image is suffering. Family shares their wealth. They had actually done it. They had finally crossed the line from toxic family dynamics and golden child favoritism straight into felony financial abuse. Odessa, I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper that barely sounded like my own. I am perfectly healthy. I have not been near a piece of scaffolding all week. My parents lied to your face. They forged whatever documents they brought you. Lock Kaylin out. Now. I am so sorry, Declan, Odessa said, her voice tight with urgent panic. I am initiating a hard fraud lockdown on the account immediately. But because they utilized the emergency contact protocol and the legal documents looked official and notarized, the banking system processing takes 24 to 48 hours to fully reverse a secondary user addition. He cannot withdraw cash right this second because of the internal fraud alert I am putting on it, but he can see the balance. And if the lockdown drops before the corporate fraud department clears it, he could wire it out. 24 hours, I muttered, staring out the windshield at the blinding, unforgiving sun. They wanted to play dirty. They wanted to steal the money I broke my back to earn so Kaylin could fund his fake, plastic luxury lifestyle. They thought they could outsmart the dumb, blue-collar brother who never went to a fancy college. Leave the access on the account, I told Odessa, a dark, brilliant plan forming in my mind. Do not delete his username yet. Just make sure the fraud freeze holds tight for the next 3 hours. I am coming into the city, and I am moving the money myself. I want them to see exactly what they did. I hung up the phone, the frantic rage bubbling over into a chilling, calculated calm. If Kaylin wanted to see my bank account, I was going to give him a front row seat to his own financial ruin. I just wondered how long it would take for the golden child to realize he had walked straight into a bear trap. To truly understand the sheer, breathtaking audacity of what Harrison and Genevieve had just done, you have to understand the sick, twisted joke that was my family dynamic. I am 32 years old. I own and operate one of the most successful commercial heating and cooling companies in the greater Pittsburgh area. I employ 40 hardworking men and women who rely on me to feed their families. I wear scuffed steel-toed boots, heavy canvas jackets, and I smell like motor oil, refrigerant, and ozone 90% of the time. I built my life with my bare, calloused hands. I am proud of the dirt under my fingernails because it built an empire. Kaylin is 30 years old. He refers to himself as a luxury lifestyle consultant. If you ask me what that actually means, I could not tell you, and honestly, neither could he. From what I can gather from his insufferable social media presence, he gets paid absolute peanuts to tell rich people which velvet ropes they should stand behind, which obscure European wines to order, all while pretending he inherently belongs on the other side of those velvet ropes. He wears tailored Italian suits, leases luxury sports cars he cannot afford to put premium gas in, and lives in a downtown glass loft that I know for a factual certainty is always at least 2 months behind on rent. In my parents' eyes, Kaylin is a sophisticated, worldly aristocrat navigating the elite, glittering circles of high society. I, on the other hand, am just a glorified plumber who got somewhat lucky. My mother, Genevieve, a real estate agent who had not sold a single residential property in 2 years, and my father, Harrison, a middle management paper pusher at a logistics firm, worshipped the very ground Kaylin walked on. They loved the aesthetic of wealth, even if it was entirely built on a mountain of high-interest debt and psychological delusion. The contrast between us was not just a matter of career choices. It was a matter of basic human decency, a brutal lesson they forced down my throat at my own grandmother's funeral just last year. I remember standing in the pouring, freezing rain near the muddy burial plot. I had paid for the entire funeral out of my own pocket, the mahogany casket, the sprawling floral arrangements, the post-service catering, because my parents claimed they were entirely tapped out of funds. 2 days before the solemn service, Kaylin had come to my house, crying massive crocodile tears. He said he desperately needed $2,000 for an emergency red-eye flight because his boutique consulting agency was sending him to Europe to secure a vital client, and his corporate credit card had been unexpectedly declined. Like a gullible idiot trying to keep the fragile peace during a family tragedy, I went to the ATM and handed him the cash in an envelope. He never went to Europe. He showed up to the funeral wearing a brand new pair of authentic alligator skin loafers. They cost exactly $2,000. When I confronted him in the church parking lot, the icy rain soaking through my dark, off-the-rack suit, Kaylin just scoffed, delicately brushing a non-existent speck of dust off his ridiculous, exotic shoes. Look, man, I am in the luxury service industry. Image is literally everything, he had said, looking at my wet boots with profound disgust. I cannot be seen wearing cheap, off-the-rack shoes at a highly publicized family event. You wouldn't get it, Declan. You wear filthy work boots every day. You don't understand the pressure of maintaining a high-value personal brand. I had turned to my parents, who were standing under a large black umbrella, fully expecting them to reprimand him for essentially stealing money meant for professional travel to buy hideous shoes on the day we buried our beloved grandmother. Instead, my mother simply adjusted her elegant black veil and sighed heavily, looking at me like I was a stubborn, uncultured child throwing a tantrum. "Declan, please do not start unnecessary drama today of all days," Genevieve had whispered, patting Kalen's arm protectively. "Your brother works in a very demanding, highly visual field. His appearance is his primary capital. You have plenty of money from your little repair business. You must understand that Kalen has certain elite standards to maintain." Standards. The word made my stomach violently turn. Their standard was parasite. My father had chimed in, telling me to stop being so greedy and aggressively materialistic, telling me that family supports family no matter what. That was their golden rule. Family supports family. But it only ever flowed in one singular direction. My hard-earned success was treated as a communal pool of funds meant to be endlessly drained by Kalen's vanity, while Kalen's spectacular financial failures were treated as unavoidable tragedies that the entire family had to sacrifice to fix. I was the invisible workhorse, expected to silently plow the fields, harvest the crops, and hand over the profits while they sat on the porch complaining about the dirt on my boots. Sitting in my truck now, looking at the horrifying bank notification, that old, familiar sting of family humiliation burned in my chest like acid. They did not just look down on me. They felt inherently entitled to the fruits of the very labor they openly despised. They hated my dirty hands, but they sure loved the clean, crisp money those hands produced. I put the heavy truck in drive and pulled out of the job site, my thick tires spinning angrily in the loose gravel. Kalen wanted to play the wealthy aristocrat. My parents wanted to play the supportive, affluent benefactors. They were about to find out that the Bank of Declan was permanently closed, and the eviction notice was finally coming due. Did they really think they could just forge medical documents, lie about a coma, and steal my life savings without sparking a war? Have you ever had a family member demand your hard-earned money to fund their fake lifestyle? Driving aggressively down the interstate highway toward the city, the urban landscape blurring past my tinted windows, my mind transformed into a dark museum of pain. The forgery today was not an isolated incident. It was merely the grand finale of a lifetime of disrespect, exploitation, and deep family betrayal. Every mile I drove brought back another exhibit, another painful artifact of the toxic family dynamics I had endured for far too long. Exhibit A, the oven incident. For years ago, I landed my first truly massive commercial contract. It was the turning point for my struggling company, the exact moment I knew I was not just surviving month to month, I was actually succeeding. To celebrate, and perhaps in a pathetic, lingering subconscious attempt to finally win my parents' elusive approval, I bought them a top-of-the-line, professional-grade convection oven they had been eyeing for a planned kitchen remodel. Cost nearly $5,000. I did not just buy it. I delivered it myself, hauling the massive, heavy appliance into their kitchen with two of my strongest apprentices on a Saturday morning. My mother stared at it, her nose wrinkled in visible distaste, her arms crossed over her chest. "It looks very industrial, Declan," she had said, running a manicured finger over the pristine brushed stainless steel. "It looks like something you would find in a dirty diner kitchen. It does not really fit my elegant, modern aesthetic at all." I had stood there, covered in sweat, my back aching, feeling like an absolute fool. 3 months later, Kalen brought them a small, decorative wooden box of artisanal imported green tea that he bought on clearance at a boutique grocery store for maybe $30. My parents prominently displayed that tiny tea box on the center island for over a year, telling every single neighbor and visiting relative about Kalen's exquisite taste, his thoughtfulness, and his worldly palate. The $5,000 oven, the machine that flawlessly cooked their Thanksgiving turkeys, was never mentioned once. Exhibit B, the college fund. This was the darkest, coldest corner of the museum, the deep wound that never fully healed. When I was 18 years old, I was accepted into a highly respected, solid mechanical engineering program. I had worked grueling night shifts and weekends at a local auto garage for 3 straight years, pooling every single dollar of my money into a joint college savings account my parents managed, supposedly matching my contributions. I had saved $15,000 of my own blood money. 2 weeks before the fall tuition was due, I went to the bank to get a cashier's check. The account was entirely empty. I remember sprinting home and confronting my father in the living room, my hands shaking violently as I held the printed bank statement. Harrison would not even look me in the eye. He just stared at the television. Kalen, who was 20 at the time and actively failing out of an expensive liberal arts college, had racked up massive underground gambling debts playing high-stakes poker with the wrong crowd. The bookies had literally threatened to break his legs. So, my parents drained the college fund, my money, my future, to save him. "He was in serious trouble, Declan," my father had said, his voice flat, devoid of any genuine apology. "You are smart. You are a hard worker. You can take a year off, work full-time, figure it out. Kalen is fragile. He wouldn't survive the consequences of those people. Family comes first." I did not take a year off. I took a lifetime off. I never went to college. I started as a lowly apprentice pulling itchy fiberglass ductwork in sweltering residential crawlspaces because it was the only job that paid cash immediately. I built my empire from the ashes of the future they stole from me, brick by agonizing brick. Exhibit C, the blueprints. This happened just 2 years ago, a paper cut that stung worse than a knife. I had kept a thick leather binder of my old high school architectural and mechanical drawings. It was deeply sentimental, the only tangible proof of the engineering dreams I used to have before they forced me into pure survival mode. One weekend, I went to their attic to retrieve the binder from a storage box. It was gone. In its place were 3 plastic dry cleaning bags containing Kalen's old, out-of-style tailored suits. When I rushed downstairs and asked my mother where my binder was, she did not even pause her daytime soap opera. "Oh, that old junk?" she said dismissively, waving her hand. "I threw it out last garbage day. Kalen needed a climate-controlled space for his seasonal wardrobe rotation, and your dusty box was taking up too much premium room. It was just silly doodles anyway, Declan. Grow up and let it go. Just silly doodles. Just my dreams. Just my money. Just my life." I gripped the leather steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned stark white. For years, I had swallowed the burning anger. I had kept my head down, aggressively built my business, and told myself that massive financial success was the best revenge. But success was clearly not enough for them. They could not just let me be successful in peace. They had to own it. They had to take it. They looked at me and saw nothing but an unfeeling, infinite resource to be ruthlessly harvested for the golden child's benefit. Not today. The Museum of Pain was officially closing its doors. I was entirely done being the sacrificial lamb on the altar of Kalen's massive, fragile ego. The profound hurt I felt as an 18-year-old boy watching his college fund vanish was now entirely eclipsed by the cold, calculating fury of a 32-year-old man who knew exactly how to legally destroy them. They had declared war using fraudulent medical papers. I was going to finish this war with a single bank transfer. Before I could even reach the city limits, my phone rang again, the harsh ringtone cutting through the silence of the cab. It was Mike, my lead operational foreman, and he sounded incredibly panicked over the loud roar of heavy machinery and shouting voices in the background. "Declan, boss, you need to get down to the main equipment yard right now," Mike yelled into the receiver. "We have a massive, massive problem unfolding. Mike, I am currently dealing with a major bank issue. I cannot come to the yard." "It is your mother, Declan," Mike interrupted, his voice cracking with stress. "She is at the yard. She parked her silver sedan diagonally across the main gate, blocking everyone in, and she is aggressively demanding the keys to the new commercial transport van. The massive one we specifically need to haul the custom chillers to the hospital site in less than an hour." I slammed on the heavy brakes, pulling the massive truck aggressively onto the gravel shoulder of the highway, my heart hammering violently against my ribs. "What do you mean she is demanding the keys? Did she say why?" "She is screaming at the guys, saying Kalen urgently needs the van to transport some antique furniture for a high-end client event tonight, and that since this is a family business, she has the ultimate authority to commandeer the vehicle. Declan, she called the cops. The police are actually here. She told them we are unlawfully holding family assets and refusing to cooperate with the owners." The sheer, terrifying insanity of the situation washed over me like a bucket of ice water. A family business? My mother had not contributed a single dime of capital, a single drop of sweat, or a single word of genuine encouragement to my company in her entire miserable life. And now she was actively leveraging the local police department to hijack my vital commercial vehicles for Kalen's pathetic vanity project? It hit me then, a realization so sharp it felt like a physical blow to the chest. The timing. It was not a random coincidence. My mother causing a massive, chaotic scene at my industrial equipment yard, threatening my employees, bringing law enforcement, actively risking a $1 million hospital contract. It was a calculated diversion. She was deliberately trying to tie me up, create a chaotic operational emergency that would force me to deal with the cops and my foreman on site, keeping my attention entirely focused on the physical yard while my father was miles away at the bank, smoothly slipping a forged medical power of attorney document to the branch manager. They had planned a highly coordinated, two-pronged attack to steal my money. "Mike, listen to me very carefully," I said, my voice eerily calm despite the massive dump of adrenaline flooding my system. "Do not give her the keys. Under no circumstances do you hand over those keys. Tell the responding officers that the business is a sole proprietorship limited liability company registered in my name only. She has absolutely no ownership or authority, and she is criminally trespassing on commercial property. Show them the vehicle registration in the glove box. She is throwing a massive hysterical fit, boss. She is literally crying and telling the cops you are mentally unstable and abusive. Let her throw a fit. I am turning around and I am on my way. Stall them." I whipped the heavy truck around, tires squealing loudly, as I illegally cut across the grassy median to head back toward my industrial yard. The raw, emotional rage I felt earlier was entirely gone, replaced by a terrifying, hyper-focused clarity. My parents were not just toxic. They were actively trying to sabotage my livelihood to serve Kaylin. They were perfectly willing to let my company fail, let my men lose their jobs, and breach a massive hospital contract just so Kaylin could play moving man for some rich snob without renting a U-Haul. When I arrived at the dusty yard 15 minutes later, the scene was exactly as Mike described, only louder. My mother's silver sedan was parked obnoxiously across the chain-link gates. 2 police cruisers with flashing red and blue lights were parked nearby. Genevieve was standing there, wearing a ridiculous oversized sun hat and a silk scarf, waving her arms dramatically and pointing an accusatory finger at my bewildered foreman. I parked my truck, killed the roaring engine, and walked over, my heavy boots crunching loudly on the gravel. "Officers," I said in a booming voice, stepping firmly between my mother and the police. "I am Declan, the sole owner of this company. This woman is my mother, but she has absolutely zero legal, financial, or managerial ties to this business. She is not an employee. She is not an investor. I want her removed for trespassing immediately." Genevieve gasped loudly, clutching her pearl necklace in a sickening display of theatrical shock. "Declan, how dare you speak to me that way? Your brother is in a terrible bind. He has an emergency event and needs a transport vehicle. I am your mother. I gave you life. You owe your family your support. I owe you absolutely nothing." I cut her off, my voice echoing off the corrugated steel of the massive warehouses. "You do not own this company. You do not own me. And you certainly do not own my vehicles." I turned my attention back to the lead officer. "If she does not move her car in exactly 60 seconds, I want it towed at her expense, and I will press formal trespassing charges." The officer, clearly sensing the absolute zero-tolerance policy radiating from my tone, turned to Genevieve with a stern look. "Ma'am, unless you have legal paperwork proving ownership of this business, you need to vacate the premises immediately. This is a civil matter, and you are currently trespassing on private commercial property. Move the vehicle now." My mother's face contorted into an ugly, hateful sneer. The fragile mask of the loving, concerned mother slipped completely, revealing the monster underneath. She leaned in close to me, her voice dropping to a venomous hiss that only I could hear. "You have always been a selfish, ungrateful little brute. Kaylin is out there trying to make something beautiful and refined out of his life, and you just wallow in the dirt like a pig. You will regret treating your family this way, Declan. Mark my words, you will pay for this." She stormed angrily back to her car, peeling out of the driveway and leaving a massive cloud of suffocating dust in her wake. I watched her go, knowing exactly why she was acting so confident, so smug. She truly thought the bank account was already compromised. She thought she had won the war while I was fighting the battle at the gate. I turned to Mike, instructed him to get the custom chillers to the hospital immediately, and got back into my truck. The diversion failed. Now it was time to move the money. I was halfway back on the road heading toward the bank when my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID flashing on the screen showed Uncle Roland. Roland was my father's younger brother, but they could not have been more fundamentally different if they belonged to separate species. Roland was a retired Marine, a master carpenter, and a man who spoke his mind with the delicate subtlety of a sledgehammer. He was the only person in the entire extended family who saw right through Kalen's gold-plated facade and openly despised my parents' enabling behavior. He was the only one who ever showed up to my high school graduation when my parents skipped it to take Kalen on a stress relief spa weekend. Roland was my only ally in a family of vultures. I answered the call on the truck's Bluetooth system. "Hey, Uncle Ro. Bad time right now. Make it a good time, kid, because you seriously need to hear this." Roland's voice was rough, gravelly, like sandpaper on dry wood. "I just got off the phone with your idiot father. He called me literally begging for a short-term loan. A massive one." I frowned, keeping my eyes locked on the heavy afternoon traffic. "Why? They just tried to rob me blind. What do they need your retirement money for?" "Because Kalen is going down in spectacular flames, Declan," Roland said grimly, a hint of dark satisfaction in his tone. "His fancy luxury lifestyle? It is a giant house of cards, and a stiff breeze just hit it. He has not paid rent on his downtown glass loft in 6 months. The landlord started formal eviction proceedings this morning. But that is not even the worst of it. He borrowed serious money from some very unsavory characters to keep up his wealthy appearances. Loan sharks, Declan. Guys who do not send polite letters, they send thugs with baseball bats. He owes them well over 100 grand. A cold, terrifying chill ran rapidly down my spine. That explained the sheer desperation. That explained the forged medical documents and the ridiculous fake coma story. It was not just about Kalen wanting extra spending money for a vacation. It was about literally saving his kneecaps from being shattered by criminals. "Your parents are completely scrambling," Roland continued, his voice tight. "They took out a massive second mortgage on their house last year to quietly pay off Kalen's maxed-out credit cards, so the bank will not give them another dime. Harrison mentioned something about tapping into family reserves to save his golden boy. I know exactly how they operate, Declan. I know they look at your successful business like a giant piggy bank. Check your accounts. Lock everything down tight. If Kalen goes under, they will try their hardest to drag you down into the mud with him. They already tried, Uncle Ro," I said quietly, the anger simmering just below the surface. "They went to my bank this morning with fake medical power of attorney papers. Told the branch manager I was in a coma." Roland let out a string of creative curses that would make a seasoned sailor blush. "Those sick, twisted, Declan. Tell me they didn't get their hands on the money." "They didn't. The bank manager put a 24-hour fraud freeze on all withdrawals. Kalen can see the balance, but he cannot touch it yet. I am dealing with it right now." "Good boy," Roland grunted. "Burn them, Declan. Burn it all down. They made their toxic bed with that spoiled brat. Let them sleep in it. Do not give them a single penny." I ended the call, making a sharp turn and pulling into the parking lot of a completely different financial institution. A small, regional credit union over 30 miles away from my parents' house. A place where no one knew my name, let alone my family's toxic history. I walked in, heavy dust on my boots, dark grease on my jeans, and sat down at the desk of a commercial account specialist. "I need to open a brand new corporate LLC checking account immediately," I told the teller, pulling out my official business license, my state ID, and a thick stack of legal incorporation documents. "And I need to initiate a massive wire transfer from an external account. Right now, before the end of the business day." The entire process took 45 agonizing minutes. Every single second felt like a ticking time bomb. I was terrified that some automated glitch in my old bank system would lift the fraud freeze early and let Kalen siphon the funds into his loan shark's pockets. Finally, the teller handed me a printed slip of paper. "Okay, Mr. Declan, the new secure account is active. How much are we transferring from the external account today?" I logged into my old bank app on my phone. The balance stared back at me, a testament to my suffering. $150,000. "Transfer $149,999.95, I said, my voice completely deadpan. The teller blinked, looking over her glasses at me. "You want to leave exactly 5 cents in the account? Is that correct?" "Yes, 5 cents. $0.05. She typed it in rapidly. "Wire initiated. It will clear within the hour. The external account will be drained. Save for the 5 cents you requested." I walked out of the credit union and sat in the cab of my truck. I pulled up the old banking app and hit refresh. Balance, $0.05. I leaned back against the headrest and let out a long, ragged breath that I felt like I had been holding for years. The trap was perfectly set. The vault was empty. They had the stolen keys to a kingdom that no longer existed. I could vividly picture Kalen, sitting in his fancy loft with thugs breathing down his neck, logging into the app to check his salvation, only to find a single nickel. The sun was finally beginning to set, casting long, bruised purple shadows across the city skyline, when my phone buzzed with a new text message. It was from Genevieve. "Hi, sweetie. I know things got a little heated at your work yard today, and I am so sorry. Family gets emotional sometimes. Dad is making your favorite steaks tonight on the grill. Please come over for dinner. We love you and want to make things right." I stared at the text message, a bitter, humorless laugh escaping my lips and echoing in the truck. The sheer audacity was almost impressive. She was not sorry. She firmly thought the chaotic diversion had worked perfectly. She thought she had successfully kept me occupied with the police while the bank quietly processed Kalen's illegal access. The dinner invitation was not a peace offering. It was a carefully orchestrated ambush. They wanted to get me in a room, butter me up with cheap steak, and then spring the trap, forcing me to agree to hand over the money they thought they had already secured. I typed back a brief reply. Sure, be there at 7. I did not go home to shower. I did not change out of my filthy work clothes. I stopped at a rundown gas station and bought a $10 bottle of terrible screw-top red wine. If they wanted to invite the blue-collar disappointment to dinner, that is exactly who was going to show up. I was going to play the exact role they assigned me perfectly, right up until the explosive moment I tore up the script. I pulled into their pristine, perfectly manicured suburban driveway exactly at 7 o'clock. My massive, dirt-caked work truck looked like a heavily armored beast parked next to Kalen's leased, spotless white BMW. I grabbed the cheap wine and walked up to the front door, my heavy boots deliberately leaving faint dusty footprints on their clean walkway. Genevieve opened the door, her face plastered with a smile so incredibly fake it looked painful to maintain. "Declan, oh, you didn't change." She eyed my grease-stained canvas jacket with thinly veiled disgust but quickly recovered her composure. Come in, come in. Kalen is already here." Of course he was. The vulture was eagerly waiting for the carcass to be served. I walked heavily into the dining room. The table was set with their expensive, good china. Harrison was pouring ice water, looking incredibly nervous but determined. Kalen was sitting at the head of the table, my father's usual designated seat, looking like he had just stepped off a luxury yacht. He wore a crisp linen shirt and a smug, arrogant expression that made my fist itch violently. "Hey bro," Kalen said, leaning back lazily in the chair. He looked me up and down. "Rough day in the dirt? You have absolutely no idea," I replied flatly, aggressively setting the cheap gas station wine on the elegant table. Genevieve visibly cringed at the sight of the bottle. We sat down. The first 20 minutes were a masterclass in psychological torture. It was suffocatingly, falsely polite. They asked about the weather, about the city traffic, about everything except the massive elephant in the room. Kalen was practically vibrating with nervous, arrogant energy. He kept checking his expensive smartphone, likely waiting for an email notification from the bank, or a message from his loan sharks telling him the money was successfully received. I chewed my steak slowly. It was tough and overcooked. I watched them exchange meaningful, conspiratorial glances across the table. They truly thought I was completely oblivious. They thought I was just the dumb ox they could easily lead to the financial slaughter. Every single time Kalen looked at me, I saw the deep entitlement shining in his eyes. He genuinely believed that my money belonged to him because his life was inherently more valuable, more refined than mine. Finally, as Genevieve began clearing the dinner plates, the entire atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. Harrison cleared his throat loudly, nervously adjusting his collar. The fake smiles vanished instantly, replaced by a serious, calculated business demeanor. "Declan," my father started, folding his hands rigidly on the table. "There is something we need to discuss as a family. We need to talk about Kalen's future and your specific role in it." I leaned back in my chair, slowly crossing my arms over my chest, feeling the comforting phantom weight of the $149,999 safely sitting in a credit union they did not even know existed. "Is that right?" I asked, my voice deadly quiet, devoid of any emotion. "My role in his future?" "Yes," Kalen interjected aggressively, leaning forward, the sheer smugness radiating from his pores. "I have a massive investment opportunity, Declan. A chance to really elevate my brand to the next level. But I need liquidity. And we all know you have a massive surplus of cash just sitting around doing nothing. The ambush had officially begun. They were about to demand the money they thought they had already stolen. The tension in the dining room was thick, suffocating, and entirely one-sided. They were radiating the kind of arrogant confidence that only comes from people who believe they have already won the game before the final whistle has even blown. Harrison leaned forward, resting his elbows on the expensive mahogany table, trying to project the image of a wise, benevolent patriarch managing his family's vast estate. It was a pathetic performance. Kalen is at a critical juncture in his career. My father continued, his voice taking on a lecturing tone. His luxury consulting firm is on the verge of securing some incredibly high net worth clients. But to close these deals, he needs to project the right image. He needs capital. Liquid capital. You are sitting on a massive pile of money in your commercial accounts, Declan. Money that is just gathering dust while your brother struggles to elevate his brand. Elevate his brand. I repeated slowly, letting the absurd phrase hang in the quiet air. Is that what we are calling it now? Because from where I am sitting, it looks like he is just drowning in high-interest debt and trying to drag someone else under to save himself. Kalen scoffed loudly, rolling his eyes. Beside him sat his fiancée, Serafina. She had been unusually quiet all evening, picking at her salad with long, manicured nails. Serafina was exactly Kalen's type. High maintenance, completely obsessed with social status, and entirely dependent on the illusion of wealth he projected. She looked at my grease-stained jacket like it was a contagious disease. You just do not understand high-level business, Declan? Kalen sneered, taking a sip of his sparkling water. You deal with blue-collar laborers and dirty air ducts. I deal with elite networking. It takes money to make money. I am not asking for a handout. I am offering you an exclusive opportunity to invest in my brand. I need $150,000. Today. I stared at him, letting the sheer, unadulterated entitlement wash over me. He did not ask how my business was doing. He did not ask if taking that money would bankrupt my payroll or cost my employees their jobs. He simply demanded the exact sum he knew was in my reserve account. He demanded my life savings so he could pay off loan sharks and keep pretending to be rich. $150,000, I said softly. That is an oddly specific number, Kalen. And what exactly happens if I say no? What if I decide that my hard-earned money is staying right where it is, securing the future of the company I built from the ground up? My mother, Genevieve, let out a high, triumphant laugh. It was an ugly sound, devoid of any real joy. She reached across the table and patted Kalen's hand affectionately, looking at me with a sickeningly smug expression. Well, sweetheart, that is the beauty of family, Genevieve said, her voice dripping with condescension. Sometimes we have to make the hard decisions for you. We know you can be incredibly selfish and short-sighted when it comes to sharing your wealth. So, your father and I took the initiative. We legally added Kalen to your commercial account this morning, using our emergency contact authority. We took care of the paperwork while you were busy playing in the dirt at your work yard. Kalen already has full access. The absolute betrayal in her eyes was chilling. She was proud of herself. She genuinely believed she was a hero for robbing her own son to feed the parasite sitting next to her. You committed felony fraud, I stated plainly, my voice dangerously calm. You lied to a bank manager. You forged a medical power of attorney. You told them I was in a coma. Harrison waved his hand dismissively, his face turning a slight shade of red. Do not be so dramatic, Declan. It was a white lie to bypass the bureaucratic red tape. We are your parents. We have every right to manage family assets when one sibling is hoarding resources while the other is in a desperate crisis. Crisis? I echoed. You mean the illegal loan sharks he owes money to? Kalen flinched violently, his smug mask slipping for a fraction of a second. Serafina turned to look at him, her perfectly arched eyebrows furrowing in sudden confusion. Loan sharks? Kalen, what is he talking about? You said this was an investment capital transfer for the new office space. Shut up, Declan, Kalen snapped, his voice rising in panic. He looked at Serafina, forcing a reassuring smile. He is just lying because he is jealous. Everything is fine, babe. In fact, everything is perfect. I already wrote the checks. My eyes narrowed. You did what? Kalen puffed out his chest, leaning back in his chair with a triumphant, arrogant smirk. I knew the bank would process the access today. I have connections. So this afternoon, I wrote 3 cashier's checks drawn against your account routing number to settle my immediate obligations. They are cashing them first thing tomorrow morning. The money is already spent, Declan. You cannot stop it now. It is done. Welcome to the big leagues. He was so proud of himself. He thought he had outsmarted me. He thought he had successfully stolen my blood, sweat, and tears to save his own miserable skin. And he was bragging about it at the dinner table while eating a steak my father cooked. The level of sociopathic entitlement was almost beautiful in its sheer, horrific perfection. It made what I was about to do next feel so incredibly satisfying. The silence in the dining room stretched out, tight and fragile like a piano wire about to snap. They were all staring at me, waiting for the explosion. They were waiting for me to yell, to flip the table, to scream about fairness and legality. They wanted to see me broken and defeated, completely powerless against their coordinated family betrayal. Instead, I reached into the pocket of my heavy canvas jacket and pulled out my smartphone. I did not yell. I did not raise my voice a single decibel. I simply unlocked the screen, opened my banking application, and slid the phone smoothly across the polished mahogany table until it rested directly in front of Kalen's plate. Here is the thing about the big leagues, Kalen, I said. My voice is cold and hard as concrete. In the big leagues, you always verify your assets before you write a check. You were granted access to the account this morning. But it is truly fascinating to me that you did not actually check the balance before you handed over those fraudulent checks to violent criminals. Kalen looked from me to the phone. A shadow of doubt flickered in his eyes. He reached out slowly, his manicured fingers trembling slightly, and picked up the device. Harrison and Genevieve leaned in close, their arrogant smiles faltering as they tried to read the screen. I watched Kalen's face. I watched the exact millisecond his entire fake, constructed reality shattered into a million jagged pieces. The color completely drained from his face, leaving his skin a sickly, ashen gray. His eyes widened in absolute primal terror. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked like a man who had just stepped off a cliff and finally looked down. What is this? Kalen whispered, his voice cracking violently. This has to be a glitch. The system is lagging. Read the number, Kalen, I commanded, leaning forward. Read it out loud for the family. 0? Kalen choked out, tears of sheer panic welling up in his eyes. He tapped the screen frantically, reloading the page over and over again. It says $0.05. 5 cents. Where is it? Where is the $150,000? Where is my money? Genevieve let out a high-pitched shriek, snatching the phone from his hands. Declan, what did you do? Where is the family reserve? It is exactly where it belongs, I said, a dark, merciless smile spreading across my face. It is sitting in a highly secure, entirely separate corporate account at a credit union you do not know the name of under an LLC you have no access to. I initiated a wire transfer the absolute second I got the fraud alert from my bank manager. I emptied the vault hours before you even started the grill for dinner. Harrison stood up abruptly, his chair scraping violently against the hardwood floor. You cannot do that. That money was designated for Kalen's emergency. You selfish bastard. You moved it just to spite your own brother. I moved it to protect my business from a coordinated criminal theft. I shot back, not breaking eye contact with my father. You handed him the keys to the safe, but you were too stupid to realize I already took the gold out the back door. Kalen suddenly grabbed his own hair, letting out a raw, guttural sound of pure panic. The checks. The loan sharks. They have the checks. When they try to cash them tomorrow and they bounce, they are going to kill me. They are literally going to break my legs. Declan, you have to transfer the money back. You have to save me. Serafina, who had been sitting frozen in shock, finally moved. She stood up, her chair tipping over backward with a loud crash. Her face was twisted in absolute disgust. Loan sharks, Serafina screamed, her voice shrill and piercing. You wrote bad checks to violent criminals? You told me you were securing legitimate venture capital. You told me you owned the consulting firm outright. You are completely broke. Kalen reached out to her, sobbing uncontrollably now. Serafina, baby, please, it is just a temporary cash flow problem. My brother is just being stubborn. He will fix it. He always fixes it. Do not touch me, Serafina yelled, slapping his hand away. She grabbed her expensive designer purse from the floor. She looked at Kalen like he was a piece of rotting garbage, then looked at my parents with equal disgust. You people are completely insane. You are broke, pathetic liars. Without another word, she picked up her heavy crystal water glass and threw the ice-cold contents directly into Kalen's face. The water splashed over his crisp linen shirt, ruining his perfect aesthetic. She turned on her heel and stormed out of the front door, slamming it so hard the windows rattled in their frames. Kalen sat there, dripping wet, completely broken, sobbing hysterically into his hands. His fiancée was gone. His money was gone. And the men he owed $100,000 to were holding bounce checks. The 5 cents in that account was his absolute rock bottom. The dining room descended into absolute chaos. Kalen was weeping loudly, rocking back and forth in his chair like a terrified toddler. Genevieve was hovering over him, furiously dabbing his wet shirt with a cloth napkin while shooting venomous, hateful glares in my direction. Harrison, however, was past the point of panic. He had crossed straight into a desperate, aggressive rage. He marched around the table, pointing a shaking finger directly at my face. "You are going to fix this right now, Declan," Harrison roared, his face purple with fury. "You are going to pull out your phone, you are going to call whatever bank you hid our money in, and you are going to wire it directly to Kalen's personal account. If you do not, I swear to God, I will pick up the phone and call the police. I will tell them you embezzled company funds to avoid supporting your family. I will ruin your business reputation." I actually laughed. A cold, hard laugh that echoed in the chaotic room. "Call them, please, Harrison. Pick up your phone and dial 911. Tell the police exactly how you forged a medical power of attorney, lied about me being in a coma, and attempted to illegally access a commercial business account. Let us see who leaves this house in handcuffs." Before my father could respond, the sharp, piercing sound of the front doorbell rang through the house. The silence that followed was instant and heavy. Harrison froze. Genevieve stopped wiping Kalen's shirt. Kalen let out a pathetic whimper, terrified that the loan sharks had already arrived to collect their debt. Harrison slowly walked to the front door and pulled it open. It was not the police and it was not a loan shark. It was a uniformed courier wearing a badge from my primary commercial bank. "Harrison Carter?" the courier asked in a bored, professional tone. "Yes, that is me," my father said hesitantly. "I have an urgent, certified legal delivery from the branch manager, Odessa. I need your signature here." Harrison signed the electronic pad with a shaking hand. The courier handed him a thick, sealed manila envelope and walked back to his van. Harrison stood in the doorway, staring at the envelope like it was a live grenade. Right at that moment, my phone rang on the table. It was Odessa. I answered it and immediately put it on speaker volume for the entire room to hear. "Declan?" Odessa's voice came through, crisp, professional, and completely devoid of warmth. "I am calling to confirm that your wire transfer was fully completed, and your funds are entirely secure in your external account." "Thank you, Odessa," I said, leaning back in my chair. "My parents are actually here with me right now. They just received a package from your courier." "Excellent," Odessa said, her voice turning to pure steel. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, if you are listening, I need to inform you of the immediate actions taken by this financial institution regarding your visit to my branch this morning. We have thoroughly reviewed the medical power of attorney documents you submitted. Our legal department confirmed with the hospital you listed that Declan was never admitted, let alone placed in a medically induced coma. The documents you presented were completely forged." Genevieve gasped loudly, covering her mouth with her hand. Harrison dropped the envelope onto the floor. "As a federally insured institution, we have a strict legal obligation regarding financial fraud," Odessa continued relentlessly. "We have officially filed a comprehensive report with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the local police department for felony financial fraud, identity theft, and attempted grand larceny. Furthermore, as you both hold personal checking and savings accounts with our bank, those accounts have been completely frozen and locked pending the federal investigation. You will not be able to withdraw a single penny." "You froze our accounts?" Genevieve screamed at the phone. "How are we supposed to buy groceries? How are we supposed to pay our mortgage?" "That is a matter for the authorities, ma'am," Odessa replied coldly. "Declan, your business accounts are safe. We will be in touch regarding the police report. Have a good evening." The call disconnected, leaving a heavy, dial-tone silence in its wake. They were completely ruined. The bank had locked them out of their own money. The FBI was going to investigate them for felony fraud. Kalen's checks to violent criminals were going to bounce in the morning. And they had absolutely no one to blame but themselves. They tried to dig a grave for my financial future, and they ended up burying themselves alive in it. I stood up slowly, picking up my dirty work jacket from the back of the pristine dining chair. I looked down at the three of them, the broken golden child, the weeping mother, the paralyzed father. They looked so incredibly small, so completely pathetic. Dinner was terrible, I said quietly. Do not ever contact me again. I walked out the front door, got into my heavy work truck, and drove away into the night, leaving them to burn in the fire they started. Thank you for watching this far. If you are loving this brutal reality check, please drop a comment saying, "I'm Win" down below. It is our secret code for the real ones who watch until the end, and I will be hearting and replying to every single comment with that keyword. Now let us see the final fallout. The immediate aftermath of the dinner was exactly the kind of toxic circus I expected. The next morning, as I was sitting in my office going over the new hospital contract, my phone started blowing up. It was not Kalen and it was not my parents. They were likely too busy dealing with the frozen bank accounts and the looming threat of Kalen's loan sharks. No, the calls were coming from the flying monkeys. Aunt Rowena, my mother's older sister and the undisputed gossip queen of the extended family, left me 3 blistering voicemails before 10 o'clock in the morning. I finally picked up on the 4th call. "Declan," Rowena shrieked into my ear the second I answered. "You are an absolute monster. Your mother is completely inconsolable. She told me you forcefully kicked them out of your business, refused to help your poor brother when he was facing a tiny financial hiccup, and then you maliciously hacked their bank accounts and froze their money. How dare you treat your family this way? You are a selfish, greedy pig." I held the phone away from my ear, letting her toxic rant wash over me. Genevieve was spinning the narrative. She was playing the ultimate victim, completely omitting the part where they forged medical documents and tried to steal $150,000 from me. She wanted to weaponize the extended family to pressure me into dropping the fraud charges and bailing Kalen out of his criminal debt. "Are you finished, Rowena?" I asked calmly when she paused for breath. "I am not finished until you march down to that bank and unfreeze their money," she demanded. "Your brother is in danger. Family supports family. Declan, you have more than enough money to share." "Family supports family?" I repeated, a cold smile touching my lips. "Right? Check your Facebook in exactly 5 minutes, Rowena, and then tell me how much you want to support them." I hung up the phone and opened my laptop. For years, I had kept my family drama private. I had protected their fragile, fake image because I thought taking the high road was the right thing to do. But taking the high road just gave them a better vantage point to shoot me in the back. It was time to nuke their reputation from orbit. I drafted a long, highly detailed public post on my personal Facebook page, making sure to tag Aunt Rowena, my parents, Kalen, and every single nosy aunt, uncle, and cousin in our extended family network. The post was brutally honest. I detailed exactly how my parents had drained my college fund years ago to pay Kalen's gambling debts. I explained how they constantly belittled my blue-collar career while simultaneously demanding the money it generated. And then, for the grand finale, I attached the physical evidence. I uploaded a clear, high-resolution photo of the forged medical power of attorney document that Odessa had securely emailed me. It clearly showed their signatures under a statement claiming I was in a severe, life-threatening coma. Below that, I attached the screenshot of the bank notification showing Kalen's username added to my account. And finally, I attached the wire transfer receipt showing the $149,999 safely moved out, leaving exactly 5 cents. I hit publish. The social fallout was absolutely instantaneous and entirely catastrophic for Kalen's precious, curated image. Within an hour, my phone was vibrating off the desk with shocked text messages from cousins who had previously bought into Kalen's fake luxury lifestyle. Aunt Rowena called back, but this time she was stuttering, completely horrified by the forged coma documents, aggressively backpedaling her earlier insults. But the best part was the public reaction on Kalen's own social media. Several of his elite networking friends and former clients saw the post. The illusion was completely shattered. People began commenting on his pictures, calling him a fraud, a thief, and a pathetic mama's boy who tried to rob his own hardworking brother. The fake aristocrat was finally exposed as nothing more than a desperate, broke criminal. The flying monkeys scattered, completely abandoning my parents when they realized the sheer, undeniable magnitude of the felony fraud they had committed. The isolation was absolute. 2 incredibly peaceful, silent months passed. My HVAC business boomed, unburdened by the constant, draining emotional and financial stress of my family's demands. I moved into a brand new, massive executive office building, completely separating myself from the dirt and grind of the work yard. Through Uncle Roland, who kept a distant, watchful eye on the unfolding disaster, I learned exactly what happened to my family. The loan sharks had indeed come looking for Kalen when the fraudulent checks bounced. He avoided having his legs broken only because Harrison and Genevieve desperately liquidated every single valuable asset they owned. They sold their cars. They sold my mother's jewelry. They sold the antique furniture. They scraped together just enough cash to keep the criminals away. But the financial devastation was absolute. Kalen's luxury consulting firm collapsed entirely. His reputation in the city was completely toxic. Without his expensive suits and leased sports car, he was entirely unemployable in the corporate world. To survive, the golden child was forced to take a minimum wage job working the graveyard shift as a commercial janitor, scrubbing toilets in the very same downtown high-rises he used to pretend he owned. The ironic contrast was nothing short of poetic justice. But the worst blow fell on Harrison and Genevieve. Because of the ongoing federal fraud investigation, their credit was completely destroyed. They could not access any remaining savings. They fell completely behind on the massive second mortgage they had taken out to save Kalen the year prior. The bank initiated formal foreclosure proceedings on their beautiful suburban home. They were weeks away from being thrown out onto the street, which brought them crawling to my new office on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. My receptionist buzzed me, her voice tight. "Declan, your parents and your brother are here in the lobby. They look terrible. They are begging for a 5-minute meeting." I leaned back in my expensive leather chair, looking out the massive window at the city skyline. "Send them in." They walked through the heavy glass doors, and they looked completely unrecognizable. The arrogance was entirely gone, replaced by the hollow, sunken look of people who had been completely crushed by the consequences of their own actions. Kalen looked exhausted, his hands raw and blistered from harsh cleaning chemicals. Genevieve was weeping silently. Harrison looked 10 years older, his shoulders slumped in defeat. They stood awkwardly in my massive, pristine office, looking around at the success they had tried so hard to steal. "Declan," Harrison started, his voice cracking with humiliation, "we have absolutely nowhere else to go. The bank is foreclosing on the house on Friday. We are losing everything. We know we have no right to ask. But please, can you help us?" Kalen stepped forward, unable to even look me in the eye. "I am sorry, Declan, for everything. I am scrubbing toilets. I lost Serafina. I lost everything. Please, just help Mom and Dad keep the house." I looked at them in silence for a long time. I let them sit in the heavy, humiliating weight of their desperation. Then, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a thick stack of legal documents, tossing them onto the center of my desk. "You are not losing the house on Friday, Harrison," I said calmly. They all looked up, a sudden, desperate flicker of hope igniting in their eyes. Genevieve clasped her hands together. "Oh, Declan, you paid the bank? You saved our home? Thank God. Thank you." "I did not save your home," I corrected her, my voice turning to ice. "I utilized my corporate LLC, the same one you tried to steal from, to completely purchase the distressed debt from your mortgage lender. I bought the foreclosure rights." The hope in their eyes died instantly, replaced by utter confusion. "What does that mean?" Harrison whispered. "It means the bank does not own your house anymore," I said, leaning forward and steepling my fingers. "I do. I am your new landlord. I am not kicking you out onto the street. But from this day forward, you and Kalen will pay me monthly market rate rent to live in that house. You will sign a strict, ironclad lease agreement. You will pay on the first of every single month, Songfang, just like complete strangers." I pushed the lease documents across the desk. "If you are late on rent by a single day, or if Kalen quits his janitor job, I will legally evict you and sell the property to the highest bidder. I will strip you of the last thing you own. You wanted to live off my money? Fine. Now you will work for it." I had completely stripped them of their final illusion of power. They were no longer my abusive parents. They were my desperate tenants. They signed the lease documents with shaking hands, their tears staining the thick paper. There was no argument, There was no negotiation. They knew absolutely that I held all the cards, and they knew I would not hesitate to pull the trigger if they stepped out of line. They left my office broken, carrying the heavy burden of their new, grim reality. There was no magical family reconciliation. There was no tearful therapy session where we all hugged and forgave each other. That only happens in cheap movies. In the real world, toxic people only respect one thing: absolute, unyielding boundaries enforced by severe consequences. Kalen is still scrubbing toilets. Every month, a portion of his meager paycheck goes directly into my corporate account to pay for the roof over his head. Every time he picks up a mop, he remembers exactly why he is holding it. The golden child finally learned the true value of $1, and he learned it in the most painful, humiliating way possible. Harrison and Genevieve live in quiet, desperate isolation. The extended family completely abandoned them after my Facebook post exposed their fraud. They spend their days clipping coupons and living in constant, terrifying fear of angering their landlord. They are trapped in the house they used to proudly show off, forced to work menial jobs in their old age just to survive. I sit in my corner office, managing my booming company, surrounded by employees who respect me and a life I built with my own 2 hands. I sleep soundly every single night, completely free from the crushing weight of their expectations and demands. Some people say family is everything. They say you have to forgive, you have to forget, you have to keep giving until you have nothing left to give. But I learned a very different lesson. I learned that family is just a biological accident. True respect is earned, and true love does not involve forging medical documents to steal your life savings. Sometimes, the only way to heal a deeply infected wound is to take a hot knife and completely cut out the rotting, necrotic tissue. I cut them out. I took away their power, I took away their pride, and I forced them to live in the harsh, unforgiving reality they tried so desperately to avoid. But Uncle Roland called me last week. He said that while he respects my business acumen, forcing my own parents to pay me rent in their twilight years is incredibly cold. He said I might have gone too far, that I became just as ruthless as they were. Kalen sends me pathetic, groveling emails every week, begging for a rent reduction, begging for just a sliver of forgiveness. I automatically route them to my spam folder, but the sheer desperation is undeniable. So, I leave it to you, the jury of the internet. Was Uncle Roland right? Did I go too far by becoming their landlord and forcing them to scrub toilets to pay me back? Or did they get exactly what they deserved for trying to steal my future to fund a fake luxury lifestyle? Have you ever had to enforce an iron boundary with a toxic family member? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I read every single one of them. Thank you so much for watching this crazy story on the Payback Diaries. If you enjoyed this brutal reality check, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on the most insane family drama on the internet. See you in the next video.